This is the news story that the entire world is reporting on right now. Every news organization, what is named, is running this story. It is horror, and it unfolds in the pit of hell called Cameroon. 2 mothers and their 2 children, one of them a girl under 10 years probably, hanging onto the hand of her mother, and a toddler strapped to the back of its mother, are dragged along and slapped in the face by Biya forces who claim that the women and the children are members of the Islamic sect Boko Haram. The women are led to a clearing in the middle of the Sahel north, where without offering the least resistance, pieces of their garments, such as their headscarves and t-shirts, are used to blindfold them. They are then made to sit on the ground as one of the soldiers asks that the child strapped to the mother's back be separated before execution. Another soldier, feigning sympathy, mutters regrets that the child must pay for whatever crimes are blamed on his mothers. No sympathy is shown towards the girl of under 10 years as her t-shirt is lifted above her head, covering her eyes. They are made to sit down or have lay down on the ground alongside what looks like scattered skeleton bones on the site of little heaps of earth and stones that look like the shallow graves of people previously executed in much the same way. Within seconds, machine gun fire is heard, and no fewer than 10 shots are fired, execution style, into the women and children. In the deafening silence that follows, we can hear one of the soldiers reload and shoot at least 8 more shots. The soldiers walk up to the bodies of their victims, and one of them remarks that the child strapped to the mother's back is still alive. One more shot is fired from close range before one of the soldiers is overheard scolding the person shooting the video. The videographer is told to keep fear aside and make sure that the video is well produced. Then they request that some dust be sprinkled over the mortal remains. At least 2 of the soldiers involved with the executions have been formally identified. The names of the 2 monsters already identified are Corporal Barnabas Donoso Govel and Chocho Syriac Bidyala. May they burn in hell.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
It has been a week of sorrow, stress, panic, more war crimes, crimes against humanity, perpetrated by the colonial forces of an 85-year-old tyrant who this week announced that he will be seeking another 7-year term as colonial president of the Republic of Cameroon in a winner-take-all one-round presidential election called for the 7th of October 2018. The announcement on his Facebook page and Twitter account that President for Life Paul Biya will be the flag bearer of his CPDM Party of Flames came on the same day his Minister of Defense, supported by air power, provided by 3 helicopter gunships, and ground forces led by several generals in a 30-car convoy, could not even muster the courage to stand and fight a ragtag Ambazonian resistance force, which ensured that the colonial forces and their minister were not welcome to Kumba, the economic capital of Ambazonia's southern zone. Across Ambazonia, the massacres, atrocity crimes, war crimes, and crimes against humanity continued unabated. It has been another bloody week, and here with a wrap-up of this week's horror stories is Innocent Cha.
The summary execution of 5 students by Biya's occupation forces in Bambili in the middle of the night Wednesday has left the student body and families in panic and confusion.
The residents of Bambili, that's a university town just close to the regional capital of the Northwest region, Bamenda, are yet to come to terms with these killings.
In an interview with Randy Josa of the BBC, the brother to one of the victims, who found at the mortuary with a blasted off head, said his quiet brother was preparing for exams when paramilitary officers knocked on the door asking for identification papers, according to neighbors he talked to. A female victim was allegedly raped before execution. News of the student shootings in Bambili was almost lost in the shuffle after ADF successfully braved off a heavily armed convoy of the Minister of Defense of La République du Cameroon. The convoy was heading out to Kumba and Nekondo Titi Thursday morning to install surveillance and disruption outposts in the southern zone.
Boss Suarez! Yes, this is General Yingfu Sangong. Yes, we got Ekondo finally. This is us. This is Ambazonia. We won. We are taking it far.
Casualties on Biya's army of occupation, as on the side of Amba boys, are unconfirmed. Meantime, credible sources confirmed that ADF and ASC forces were on a joint operation Friday to disrupt an important movement of Biya's occupation forces in the Fako, Ndian, and Meme Triangle.
The Amokaron, the go, they follow above that night, follow about some more, they can't say, and job for a door. It commenced time for up. So, I say, why that Amoka, why that the type of my man. Madame, come here, so I do show Amoka over there. The one card of the car, you can't say, man, picking, I don't put gref. Pue Kaba, bro. I said, yeah, from Yoka, so we never hear.
Red Dragons turned on the heat in Lubielem, particularly in Dungwe, Lewin, Lowa, Menji, Nchobeye, Azi, Nsoko, and Nwechem. Biya occupation forces reportedly suffered heavy losses. A couple of Amba boys lost their lives. Balinyonga was reportedly under siege late Friday after a chemistry teacher, Alfred Nyonka, went missing on Monday and his decomposed body was discovered early Friday in Batibo. Amba boys in Bali are said to have blocked major roads and were calling for backup from Batibo in a bid to sandwich Biya gangsters who have been shooting and killing unarmed citizens randomly. Wearing black t-shirts has been declared a capital offense punishable by death at the firing squad in Ambazonia. It is the essence of a word of caution shared earlier in the week by freelance journalist Ailey Smith following a pattern of executions of men in black by criminal paramilitary forces of Biya. There are serious questions surrounding purported defection of soldiers from Biya's army. An audio gone viral in which an officer calls colonial military officer Colonel Bajek to inform of his defection has been called out as a staged act meant to lure and betray Amba boys, like Dalila got Samson to her drawers and betrayed the source of his power.
And I'm telling him today that as I have left, I will be coming back. I will be coming back as an enemy. I'm very, very serious about that.
Sources are confirming that two village chiefs in Fako County are currently undergoing interrogation by Amba boys. As chiefs who allegedly bought their royalty from the colonial powers of La République, accusers say the chiefs of Musaka and Wokaka have been acting as eyes and ears of Yaoundé. Still in Boya, teachers marking the 2018 GCE took refuge under benches as the marking center came under heavy gunfire in an exchange between restoration forces and the army of occupation. Two colonial forces lost their lives in Boya. Traffic in and out of the Ambazonian capital has been interrupted for most of the week. In Widikum, 9 civilians were executed at the crack of dawn Saturday by the forces of President Biya, including 5 with the same family name, Tebit. In foreign news, Amnesty International has belied La République du Cameroon's Minister of Communication, Griot Issa Shiroma, and the army who are denying video footage capturing the gruesome execution of two mothers and their kids, including a baby strapped on the mother's back in northern Cameroon.
Like, I will shoot woman who picking for you, small picking for 1 year, 2 years for a back. Whether that woman and that begin and not this, whether that Boko Haram woman on our way see, picking where they for you back 2 years, 1 year, picking no way see.
The two BIA soldiers have since been outed as Barnabas Donosu Gorvo and Syriac Chocho Biala. An informed guess is that they will be promoted in the days ahead or at worst transferred to a different outpost till international uproar quiets down. Finally, the diaper-wearing Biya of Cameroon has officially said via Twitter that he is running for an nth term. It will be remembered that presidential terms had been abolished in Cameroon after the last presidentials in 2011. Other candidates are therefore pretenders at best, seeking to legitimize Biya's kingdom. Innocent Chia for Ambazonia Calling.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Still ahead in this edition, we have The Devil Unmasked with Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta. We have a winner for the Nyamfucka of the Week. And we are not done until we have heard our letter to Joshua. So stay tuned, kick back, relax, and enjoy Ambazonia Calling. Even those who thought no BS scandal could scandalize them anymore were shocked by news of the 85-year-old decreeing himself a candidate for his own succession and realizing that he cannot take the risk of convening a nomination convention of his ruling CPDM party for fear that even the ruling party will rebel against him on the floor of the convention and vote him down in the full glare of his own cameras. Lambertbaum says whatever the trouble is for La République, and there is plenty, Ambazonians must recognize and abide by the law which provides that it is a felony for anyone to vote in elections in another man's country.
The decision has reportedly shocked even some regime insiders who were banking on his withdrawal from the elections as a possible pathway to a resolution of the ongoing crisis. Instead, Paul Biya and his cronies are doubling down on a political stunt that Ambazonians have declared a non-event. With the current list of presidential hopefuls at 5 already, amongst whom are 2 Anglophones, Barrister Akere Mona, with a rich international portfolio, and Swiss Cameroonian Joshua Osi of the main opposition in Cameroon, the Social Democratic Front, there is the make-believe of tectonic changes to come. In a recent visit to the United States, Barrister Akere Mona of the Now movement appealed to doubting Thomases to give him a chance. One wonders what Akere has been smoking of late. He believes that with his connections in high places, he could unseat the incumbent octogenarian Biya. One thing is clear. Within the present dispensation, the president for life, Biya, is so wedded to a Tudi that it is till death that does him part. Akere has forgotten too soon that speaking French with the fluency of Molière and even his perfection in Ewondo does not qualify him to graduate from picking the hard-to-come-by crumbs falling from the master's table, such as his forebears did, to becoming the master. And truth be told, even in his native village of Ngembo, Akere cannot win elections in his father's house. Joshua Osi is a political heavyweight who has proven his mettle and political wizardry, becoming parliamentarian in the littoral region and upstaging the powerful grandfather of multi-partyism, Frundi, to become the presidential candidate for the SDF. The problem is that Joshua Osi and the SDF have stubbornly refused to learn from history. In 1992, Frundi won the presidential elections in Cameroon, and yet never acceded to the presidency. One must, however, be consoled by the fact that these two sons of Ambazonia have found new home in the littoral and central regions of La République du Cameroon, and hence have no links to Ambazonia. For those running and those planning to vote in the forthcoming presidential elections in October 2018, let them listen to the expert advice of the U.S. In his recent testimony in the Foreign Affairs Committee of U.S. Congress, Ambassador Donald Yamamoto, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of African Affairs, revealed that the United States of America will not be sponsoring the forthcoming presidential elections in Cameroon. It is a waste of scarce US dollars. The handwriting is therefore on the wall for all to see, even the blind. October 7, 2018 presents a unique opportunity for Ambazonians to demonstrate one last time that Ambazonians are damn serious about this restoration quest. Zero vote in Ambazonia. The dream is of ghost cities across Ambazonia. Ambazonians must make October 7, 2018 count. Ambazonians will not and should not take part in the forthcoming elections. Not because Biya is running and has been in power for 35 years, or because the results are already well known, but rather because it is a felony to vote in a different country. Lambert Mbom for Ambazonia Calling.
This is the land of my birth. I said this is the land of my birth. I said this is Ambazonia. This is the land of my birth.
I will never leave a shore.
Never.
I will
Never. Okala Belai, the dog tenant, Lele Afrik, Makiza graduate, Disgrace Katakis, and Kilabia, Ganaka Kavaye Yega Jibril, Lord Sokanya Jefenji, Golden Lion Award winner, Chiruma, the entire Betty and La Republique Killer Machines. This is our land.
Decreeing independence is one thing. It is what a sovereign people can do for themselves. Once that is done, as it was the case on the 1st of October for Ambazonians, the next step is for Ambazonia to win recognition. Now, that is something that other countries must do for Ambazonians. It is not possible for Ambazonians to recognize themselves. What then must Ambazonians do to convince the world to recognize their newly formed country? For one, they need to conform with international resolutions, including notably United Nations Resolution 1514, showing very clearly that this is the will of an overwhelming majority of our people who seek full, total, and outright independence, not some fake federalism or decentralization. Here is Ambazonia Calling's Catherine Fomangum.
On February 11, 1961, the people of British Southern Cameroons, now Ambazonia, voted for their independence in a referendum to join La République du Cameroon as two states equal in status. That same year, on April 21st, out of 97 United Nations member countries present, 64 voted for the independence of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. That independence, however, is yet to be enjoyed by the people of Ambazonia and recognized by the world at large. And why is that? Well, La République du Cameroon, instead of honoring the terms of the Union, with the help of France, has annexed British Southern Cameroon and has since kept the people of Ambazonia under subjugation. The question, therefore, is, does Ambazonia need to vote for her independence again? How many times will Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia vote for her independence? A child cannot be born twice, but a child can grow up and choose to change her name. Ambazonia has been annexed and colonized by La République du Cameroon for over 57 years. But we learned that as tension continued to mount in the region, and as La République du Cameroon forces massacre innocent Ambazonia with impunity, and as if to say he understands the power of election, 85-year-old Biya has decided to run for election, La République style. He therefore purports to show the world that the passionate yearning for freedom and ardent desire of the people of Ambazonia to to end the colonial rule by La République du Cameroon is just the work of a handful of terrorists, and that the majority of Anglophones, as they refer to Ambazonians, are okay with the rule that he has on them. The question, therefore, is, what will Ambazonians do to counter this narrative that Mr. Biya has preached since the beginning of the Coffin Revolution? Ambazonians all over the world came out on September 22nd to declare their desire for freedom, and again on October 1st, 2017, to declare their independence. Wasn't that enough? Or was it? What will it take for Mr. Paul Biya and the rest of the world to get this message? Some documented data? The 8 million Amber question is, why have some Ambazonians been doing the job of Paul Biya and Atanganji Paul by denying and fighting any attempt at organizing elections for our people? Who is happy that Ambazonian leaders are not recognized outside the internet chat rooms? Or are we going to take the bold step and assert our right to self-rule once and for all by implementing UN Resolution 1514? Catherine for Mangum for Ambazonia Calling.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
It is, as usual, an honor to welcome on the phone Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta, our guest for our segment, The Devil Unmasked, The Truth Out. A hearty welcome to you, Professor Tatamenta.
Thank you.
I heard Mr. Biya is running?
I heard so too.
Do you think Biya understands what elections are?
Well, we know that elections for Biya have always been devil's bargain, and very contrary to what we've all known in political history, especially in a democracy. Why I'm saying this is because elections are a political covenant that binds the electorate to the elected. In other words, it is a power conferring and transferring tool. It is a hope builder and a consensus barrier. In the case of Biya, I think it is far from that, very far from that.
Well, it is clear that Mr. Biya does not treat elections seriously.
Election to Mr. Biya is like organizing a football match where he, President Biya, is the one who determines who will compete against him. He is the one who determines the terms of the competition. He is the one who determines the referees, the linesmen, and the match delegate. And he also determines the result of the election even before he announces them. And he has the perpetual right to shift the goalpost so that nobody scores a goal against him. So this farce is something which we have seen for over 30-something years.
That is part of the reason people are calling it a selection, not an election.
And that is why they are never transparent and the votes can never be credible.
The world has turned its back on this election and on Mr. Biya. The European Union is not supporting it, they are not sponsoring it, they are not sending election monitors to Cameroon. The United States is not participating. As a matter of fact, the United States says precisely that there is no commitment to the electoral reforms that are needed to produce a legitimate, free and fair election in Cameroon.
In fact, it is a ritual ratification for Biya's self-worshipping and desires.
The President of the African Union, Dr. Faki Musa Muhammad, is in Cameroon after an AU summit during which Cameroon was not mentioned publicly. Does the AU wish to deal with this crisis in Cameroon as a private matter between Mr. Biya and them instead of between the two peoples of the Cameroons?
I think that is the best thing the international community can do, because we understand that in Biya's fact-free bubble, the retributive genocide is, or target killing of Anglophones is because they have refused to toe the line and be fed with urine and this like the disalad and so on. And that is why everything has already been laid very plainly that Biya can only succeed in doing this with those tentacular things like the Famendongos who see him as the creator.
The UN served Mr. Biya notice, of course, not?
The international community can no longer abide this because in the first place, why is he organizing only presidential elections? Why is he called only for presidential elections? The other one he had decreed away, posting them to the next. So it's known that he is an incurable cheat.
What is the link to the United Nations?
Well, to me, I think that Dr. Musa Faki Muhammad doesn't seem to be the one who can be useful in this case. I had listened to him a couple of weeks back. He analyzed the situation and said the Ambazonians had a case. But his conclusion was that as a Pan-Africanist, he didn't believe in the breaking of states and that he was a Pan-Africanist, which means that he is oblivious to all the constitutive acts of the African Union. Let me quote this. Article 4, alineate B states, it stipulates, quote, respect of borders existing on achievement of independence. And in 2010, in May, the United Nations Secretary General, current chairman, that is Dr. Ali Triki, came to Yaoundé and gave the two maps to indicate to him that the United Nations recognized two Cameroons, not one Cameroon. So he, Faki Muhammad, doesn't seem to get it. Also, a certain clause in the Constitutive Act of the United Nations, the right of the African Union to intervene in a member state pursuant to a decision of the Assembly in respect of grave circumstances, namely war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. So these are the tenets which are right there in the African Union Constitutive Act. But Faki apparently does not seem to read. Maybe it is trouble with those who have gone under the French machine, that you hide anything in a document, they will not see because they don't read. But where they see it completely wrong is that they see it as a domestic problem, not an interstate problem. It is an interstate problem. If you are following the logic of law laid down by the Security Council itself.
Could you comment, and I'm going to come to another question to address the southern zone, but regarding the northern zone, could you comment on the massacres that were perpetrated this week in places like Mbiami, in Jinikejam, in Widekum, in Batabo, in Tiden?
It's not something which is new. So the carnage which is going on, whether in Mbiami, in Jinikejam, and all over, going to the university, getting students out, lining them up and shooting them, is something which has been on the drawing board for a very long time. So I'm not surprised to get that. Many more will come if people do not stand their ground and say enough is enough and fight back very fiercely.
Also this week, and we saw lots of massacres also in the southern zone, but we saw a lot of action from restoration forces fighting in great heroism. We saw the colonial forces flee in the face of advancing restoration forces in the Kondo Titi. We saw them in action in Munyenge, in Tombel, in Menji. They fought the regime in the heart of Boya. And of course, they fought the Minister of Defense and his convoy coming into Kumba. What do you have to say about the way the resistance is going so far?
It is something we have to say kudos to them and do all it takes to help them so that they should not only be fighting with den guns, but with modern equipment. Because these fellows have laid down their lives for the sake of their nation. They are the most powerful patriots we can ever imagine. And La République du Cameroon is a country that is very hard of hearing. And that is why they are not seeing the handwriting on the wall. They are not seeing it. But no matter what happens, I think God is on the side of the Ambazonians.
And thank you very much, Prof, and have a wonderful week.
Same to you, my pleasure.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
The leaders of Ambazonia's armed wings on Ground Zero have shown leadership in a crucial moment when the diaspora, which hitherto had championed the cause of restoration of independence, seems to have lost their compass. Barrister C. Ambe warns of the dangers that would face anyone who fails to obey the laws of armed conflict, but stops to celebrate the outstanding work being done so far by resistance forces at Ground Zero.
A soldier is not just a person in uniform. A true soldier learns and perfects specific character traits, also known as army values, over several years. Traits and values which include loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and courage. Ambazonia's supposedly ragtag defense forces, fondly referred to as Amber Boys, without any formal training or years of perfecting skills, continue to exhibit and implement traits, values that traditional well-trained soldiers can only aspire to.
One day, 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 we must go.
Far from being the terrorists that La République du Cameroun, its friends and sympathizers have branded them as, these brave young men and women are freedom fighters with big hearts. Fearlessly driven by a deep love of their community, dedication to their cause, a clear vision of what they want their nation to be, a willingness to lay down their lives, and an increasing knowledge of what is required of them under international law as defenders of their homeland.
I will never, never leave my journey happy, oh, until I reach Boya. I will never, never leave my journey happy, oh, until I reach Boya.
For these Ground Zero fighters, it's not about elbowing out others and positioning themselves in halls of fame and power. It is totally and completely about delivering the territory of Ambazonia to the people of Ambazonia. No retreat, no surrender. As stated by one of their highly respected generals, we don't already date on the risk. If we leave them, we know they safe. We fight them, we know they safe. So it better say we fight. We fit even defend ourselves. Amber Boys have distinguished themselves and earned the respect of Ambazonians all over the globe through their unwavering resolve to stay united and their firm condemnation of random attacks, theft, brutality, harassment of others, dishonesty, fraud, idle gossip, and other alleged misconduct within their ranks. Their introduction of community strengthening initiatives such as alternative homeschooling for young Ambazonians, their call on landlords and creditors to exercise leniency towards tenants and debtors during these times of economic hardship, their call on Ambazonians to be each other's keeper, but more importantly, their call on Ambazonians to pray for them as they boldly face the brutal annexationist forces of La République du Cameroun, have made them symbols of national pride.
Now youths them there for Ground Zero. Now youths them be the sacrifice. Our fallen heroes are not satisfied of the way our homeland is being terrorized. We are living today so we can testify. Say the struggle no go stop until we see the end. If you like, you fill your jails with the innocent. For our freedom fighters do not kill the innocent unless you go against the rules of our instructions.
A recent strongly worded message of these fighters to allegedly feuding power-hungry Ambazonia leadership sent chills of fear down the spines of many, including the intended recipients of the message. Amber Boys called for unity, forgiveness, and collaborative action, but also warned that should leadership fail to put their heads together, bury all differences, and work for the greater good of Ambazonia, they would take matters into their own hands and prosecute the struggle themselves in their own way. The history of these young fighters can never be written without underscoring their faith and belief that theirs is a God-ordained fight. Such deep faith and belief has been constantly manifested through their references to God, the teachings of the Bible, the power of prayer, insistence on love for one another, as well as a strong belief and reliance on alternative traditional faith-based strengthening rituals like Odeshi. These valiant defenders of the people, reclaimers of the territory, and many other Ambazonians who have already paid the ultimate price are without a doubt the true heroes of this liberation struggle. See Ajimvo Ambe for Ambazonia Calling.
For almost 2 years, Ambazonians had been begging for a hearing before the U.S. Congress. Last June 27, they got their wish. A hearing was organized before the Congress of the United States and their voices were heard for once. Getting a hearing is just one step in the long road to recognition, which will only happen if countries like the United States go beyond hearings to effectively changing policy on the Cameroons. Here is Ambazonia Calling's Jude Ozugen on what next after the hearings.
After years of stampeding the lawns of the U.S. Capitol and dispatching hundreds of memoranda to the U.S. Congress, Ambazonians were finally led to a congressional hearing last June 27 and given a chance, albeit through the testimony of experts thought to be neutral, to make their case. It is one of the first clear indications that Americans have begun listening to the plight of Ambazonia. What next? Now that the hearing is behind us, you may want to ask. First, it is critical that Ambazonians build on the gains and progress that the hearing represents. They must find innovative ways of taking advantage of such a milestone to sustain pressure on the Congress of the United States. Second, Ambazonians must roll out a campaign to market their plight better to American citizens who can be championed in the next stage of the campaign for recognition. That phase involves bringing the Congress to recognize that it needs to change its current policies on the Cameroon. Third, as important as the Ambazonian crisis is, no one should ever forget that Congress has its hands full. The most important duty of every Congressperson consists of providing satisfaction to their constituents, meaning satisfactions to U.S. citizens. Foreign affairs matters, but not as half as much as the people who put Congress people in power and can record them with their vote should they neglect their priorities. Ambazonians must work doubly hard to ensure that members of Congress recognize where American interests meet Ambazonians' preoccupations and quest for international sovereignty. To put it bluntly, it is diplomacy stupid. Fourth, and with that in mind, Ambazonians must recognize that a successful military campaign on the ground must be combined by victories in the corridors of world power for the recognition quest to yield fruit in due season. We must work doubly hard to ensure that diplomats who are assigned to work on Ambazonia can side with our people in singling out restoration of independence as the solution from the primeval soup of infinite number of contending policy proposals and alternatives. We should bear in mind that actors in the policy community are continuously working and reworking policies until, as with natural selection, only the most sustainable and feasible ideas survive. We must make concrete effort to win the sympathy of pressure groups which played a critical role in the anti-apartheid campaign and South Sudanese question, including institutional groups like the Congressional Black Caucus, but also individuals like Angelina Jolie, George Clooney, and George Soros. Meaningful action is possible only if Ambazonians go beyond the comfort of fighting each other over WhatsApp groups or competing each other for position in a virtual government to effective collaboration focused solely on the recognition and the restoration quest. This is Jude Agua Ozugen for Ambazonia Calling.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
Unlike during any other week since we premiered the Nyamfucka of the Week on this program, the competition has been tough. Contenders have had to outperform themselves and others in order to win the weekly crown of shame that is the Nyamfucka of the Week. This week, though, there was no competition good enough to go up against the 800-pound gorilla of stupidity personified by the stark-raving mad Franklin Jume. This week, outperforming everyone who has tried their hand at resurrecting the Northwest-Southwest divide, Franklin Jume found a way of making history as the only human being living or dead to enter the Hall of Infamy as the Nyamfucka of the decade.
This is Franklin Jume's voice. I am ready for the worst. You are welcome to partner with us so that we war against this common enemy that is disturbing you people from sleeping in your houses in peace, from going about your businesses, from sending your children to school, and from enjoying the peace that you have always enjoyed in this region. The Southwesterner has never risen up against you people. Know that. Even those who are doing it in Manu, in Lebialem, are being manipulated. And the Lebialem people are particularly very stupid. The dullest set of people in Cameroon. Franklin Jume has said it today. They claim to be 99.99 cents. They have no iota of sense in their brain. We are going to finance a vigilante. We are going to build communities of self-resistance everywhere to war against these idiots who are hiding around the camps in the southwest region and killing our people and, looting our property and kidnapping us and taking our hard-earned money.
That was indeed the voice of a very sick man, Franklin Jume. Someone said he's a teacher. If any parents have their children in this madman's class, they should consider suing whoever Franklin Jume's employers are for the mental damage that a sick and madman has already probably done to their children. What an empty vessel.
This week, Ambazonia Calling is brought to you by themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
The colonialists have been collecting money from whoever, and they claim to be providing humanitarian assistance to Ambazonians. Willie Brodade tells us exactly what kind of madness is involved here.
Since Prime Minister Yang of La République du Cameroun announced the launching of a humanitarian relief plan for the Northwest and Southwest regions, I have watched with a mixture of disbelief and revulsion as government ministers have been going from region to region, forcing civil servants and business owners to contribute funds towards this Machiavellian plan. The only image that these bizarre ceremonies conjured up in my mind are best described by the 16th century English poet Robert Burns in his poem Tam O'Shanter. Warlocks and witches in a dance is how that descriptor begins. Yes, this is total witchcraft. You have to be a warlock operating in an esoteric circle like the one Yang was in when he declared that our displaced brothers and sisters were victims of armed groups that had forced them to flee their homes. How could he make such a claim when it is common knowledge that all the people living in the forest and internally displaced are in the predicament they are in because they were escaping from the marauding soldiers who have so far burned close to 100 villages and killed possibly thousands of unarmed civilians? What has been going on since that announcement can only be compared to the macabre dance that Burns so vividly describes in his poem when you consider the following. Since the beginning of this crisis, almost all these people displaying this fake compassion have never even acknowledged that there was a problem to begin with. That most of these people donating have been alarmingly silent in the face of the gross human rights violations and sheer terror the population of these regions have been subjected to for almost 2 years. That these people who are so quick to contribute blood money in this publicity stunt have not asked their government to demilitarize these regions and stop the war that it declared against us as a sign of good faith. That these people have not called on the government to release all those who have been arrested and detained as a result of the crisis. That the government has not called off the military operations that they ordered in Ambazonia nor have they stopped the arbitrary arrests, constant harassment, and intimidation of the population. In fact, since the launch of this villainous program, the terrorist soldiers of La République have stepped up their nefarious activities. Earlier this week, they went on a blitzkrieg in Boyo that led to massacres in Belo and Fundong. It is witchcraft indeed when the same people who orchestrated the humanitarian crisis that they pretend to want to address today are the ones who are going around organizing fundraisers to help the victims of their crimes, some of whom were not even allowed to give befitting burials to their loved ones who had been brutally massacred by the soldiers. Did any of these civil servants and businessmen ever call the government to order, talk less of condemning the actions of their military? While the dance of warlocks and witches described by Burns in Tam O'Shanter was recounted by a man who had consumed many pints of ale, none of the participants in the detestable caravan of sycophants jousting to please the god of a Tudi can claim that their silence, insensitivity, and callousness couched in detachment was a result of intoxication, for there is no drink potent enough to keep anyone in a drunken stupor for such a long time. Warlocks and witches in a dance indeed. Willibrod Ade for Ambazonia Calling.
The Fun of Fontem has just put out a very powerful video calling on all the rulers of the Northwest and Southwest, traditional rulers, to rally behind their people, to resume their full roles as the crowns, to resume their role as leaders of their people, to die if need be for their people.
Can we actually call the population and stand in the market there and look them straight in the eyes and say, I am your fun, and they will give us that respect? Have you been so fair to your people? Have you treated them or you've sold them? If all of you can stand up as one person to tell President Paul Biya that no, enough is enough, these problems are going to stop. We should not let our people feel that we have sold them. We should not let our people feel that we are not equal to the task. We should not let our people feel that we are not what we are. Yet they call us Mbe, Mo, Fun, and they bow down and they clap to us, and we sit and watch at them being slaughtered as animals. Step up for your people. Say to the government, no, enough is enough. You can't start killing my people just the way you are doing. Enough is enough. However, I will stand for my people. If it means sacrificing my own blood to make the BLM safe, I will. And I am calling on all the BLM people to stand up and fight for your rights. Our parents did it. They fought the Germans for 9 years. If it means fighting the French and the Republic for another 9 years, we will do it.
Papa no dey oh, Mama no dey oh. If you want to kill me or die. I will follow am back to where no die.
You mentioned it's a critical command by his master.
If you want to kill me or die.
Here is our letter to Joshua.
Dear Joshua, did I hear right? The word out there is that you have announced on Facebook and on Twitter that you are running for a 7th presidential term? I thought you were president for life. What do you need elections for, Joshua? What kind of king are you when you want a coronation every year? Nobody wants a weakling for a king. That is why the criminals in your Chop People Dem Money party fully understand when you do not convene an extraordinary session of the party to nominate and approve you as its flag bearer in the upcoming coronation process by way of a rigged ballot. As the oldest strongman left on the African continent after Bob Mugabe was forced to retire, as the supreme tyrant and commander of the land of crayfish and Janga people. As the all-powerful ruler, God himself, who art attitude, you have demonstrated already how most powerful you are. Anyone still in doubt can check out just how ruthlessly you can fire 18 bullets into the bodies of 2 helpless women and their young children in the north. The women and their children had bombs strapped all over them. One of them had a baby bomb to her back. The other one was dragging along her young girl, and she too was a deadly bomb, walking around even in the custody of the United States trained and funded death squadron that you run, called the Rapid Intervention Brigade. Who can blame you, Joshua, for slaughtering dangerous, armed-to-the-teeth women and children like those your soldiers cut down? You monster. Your Minister of Defense, who along with minister delegates from the Gendarmerie, have already ordered your colonial army to stop filming and posting any photos and videos of your own war crimes and crimes against humanity on WhatsApp, on Twitter, on Facebook. They thought they had done everything to ensure that all your crimes will forever be hidden under the bright sunlight of social media. Poor ministers. They did not read that censorship is dead and was buried with the Berlin Wall. Any of your terrorist soldiers who have knocked back on way too much of the immunity and impunity Kool-Aid that you say you can serve, all those guys who have drawn so much blood from whomever and wherever will soon find out that not putting down that cell phone camera renders an immense service to mankind. It is your fault, Joshua. If you knew what danger information is for murderers like you would have cut off the internet up there in the northern Cameroons. You could have prevented the damning video from going around the world in 24 hours. Your friends at Amnesty International would not have received the video. And thanks to them, everybody now knows it was impossible for your Minister of Lies and Propaganda, Issa Chiroma, and the spokesperson for your criminal army, Colonel Bajek, to clean up after the mess your death squads have made. I have tried to tell you this several times, Joshua. No matter how hard you try, you simply cannot shine shit. Unless you are the magician who knows what the past tense of shit is. You've done it on you this time around, Joshua. It stings to high heaven. The stench is in every new diaper you will wear. With the stench so foul, no wonder Ambazonians won out of the stinking good-for-nothing union. The world is horrified that you executed those women and children in cold blood. What the world really does not know is that this is not the first time you are doing it. You kill for breakfast, Joshua. In fact, ever since you killed those women and children, you have killed, let me take a conservative guess, you have killed at least 100 more similarly vulnerable people. You have been doing it for as long as you have been in power, which has been forever. I heard that your slogan for reselection is that you are the least risk. Indeed, if anyone wants to minimize their risk, they better vote for you. Otherwise, you will execute them as well at some point, like those children and women. No one needs to descend to hell when they have been to Cameroon. As a matter of fact, everyone who reports to St. Peter and the gates of heaven and tells them that they have just lived their earthly life in Cameroon will be waived any sentence to hell. They've had their share of hell just living in your Cameroon. Who can blame me for thinking so highly about your lowly self? You may have successfully hidden your crimes so far. This week's extrajudicial execution of 5 students in Bambili, of entire families in Tiden and in Widekum, your burning alive of people like Mami Api, the summary execution of mentally challenged people all across Ambazonia, your razing of nearly 100 villages, and your execution of the women and children in the north, that will permanently and irrevocably condemn you to the dustbin of history, Joshua. There is a saying that Issa Chiroma would like me to describe you using. If the poor man could speak the truth even to himself, if Issa Chiroma could say exactly what he has in his mind right now, he will let out a cry that I'm going to absolutely let out now. Damduruwaka Shege. From our studios here in Washington, D.C., our producer is Jeff McCoy. Our music today is from Ken Wanaku, the monk from Balikumato, William Ford, an ambassador of blessed memory, Eric Matisse on the web at soundimage.org, and Prince Ajua Alemanji of Ajam Sonic Kitron, USA. Ambazonia Calling is a joint production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. You can find us on the web at www.themissionstribune.com, www.compassfreepress.com, and www.africafreedomnetwork.com. Next Sunday is another day. Until then, keep the spirit, keep the faith, keep up the fight for justice and independence for Ambazonia. Stay Amba strong.